Honorable Mayor of the City of Kentwood, esteemed faith leaders, Rwandan community leaders, distinguished survivors, leaders of KWIBUKA USA, honored guests, members of the Rwandan community, friends of Rwanda, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Eliza Rwagasana Ishimwe. I am a graduate student at Case Western Reserve University, and it is my honor to serve as your Master of Ceremony for this United States National Commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. For those who want to access today's agenda, please scan the QR code on the screen. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to warmly welcome you all and thank you for being here today in remembrance and solidarity. Today, we gather not only to remember the more than 1 million lives that were lost during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, but to also honor the resilience of survivors, reflect on the lessons of history, and reaffirm our collective responsibility to stand against hatred, division, and genocide wherever it may emerge. As we begin, we kindly ask you all to put your mobile phones on silent mode and maintain an atmosphere of dignity and reflection throughout the program. We also respectfully ask that there is no applause during the commemoration, as each moment is intended for remembrance and reflection. Thank you again for your presence and for standing with us in memory and humanity. Nyakubahwa Ambassadeur w'u Rwanda muri Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika, Nyakubahwa Meya w'umujyi wa Kentwood, abayobozi b'amadini, abayobozi ba RCAs, abarokotse Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, abayobozi ba KWIBUKA, Abanyarwanda n'inshuti z'u Rwanda, mwese mwiriwe neza. Nitwa Rwagasana Ishimwe Eliza, ndi umunyeshuri muri Case Western Reserve University, nkaba ndi buyobore gahunda y'uyu munsi nk'umusangiza w'amagambo muri iki gikorwa cyo kwibuka ku nshuro ya 32 Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Abifuza kureba uko gahunda ziri bukurikirane, mwafotora QR code iri kuri screen. Mu izina ry'abateguye iki gikorwa, mbahaye ikaze kandi mbashimira kuba mwaje kwifatanya natwe. Mbere yo gutangira gahunda, turabasaba gushyira telefone muri silence no gukomeza ituze n'icyubahiro bikwiye uyu munsi wo kwibuka. Turabasaba kandi ko hataza kubaho gukoma amashyi muri gahunda yose, kuko buri gice cyateganyijwe mu rwego rwo kwibuka no kuzirikana abacu. Murakoze. Before we begin, we would like to ground ourselves in prayer. It is my honor to welcome Senior Pastor Espoir Muhabwantebe of Zion Temple Celebration Center to lead us in prayer.
Ka twubahe Imana dusenge. Mana yacu y'ubuntu n'urukundo rwinshi, turagushima kubw'uyu mugoroba mwiza uduhaye abangana batya kuba hano hantu. Turagushima kubw'umugambi wawe mwiza. Bibiliya zitubwira ngo uri Imana ihindura ibihe, uri Imana ikomeye. Turi hano kubw'uyu munsi ukomeye w'amateka yo kwibuka Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, ubwicanyi ndengakamere. Mana, turagushima ko mu bihe byose tuzatubona ukuboko kwawe gukomeye. Turagushima ko uri Imana itegura abamose baza gukura abantu mu kaga. Mana yacu, turagushima kuko Bibiliya zitubwira ngo ahari kurira kwararira umuntu, ariko mu gitondo ngo izuba rikarasa. Turagushima kuzo wakoze mu gihugu cy'u Rwanda. Uyu munsi turibuka, ariko kandi Kristo tukwereka n'ibihugu byinshi bihabiberamo ibisanare y'amateka, kugira ngo Uwiteka Imana yo mu ijuru icyo wakoze uyu munsi uraduha ibyiringiro, kuko ntari ahandi hose uzakomeza kubikora. Ubane natwe rero muri gahunda zose ziri bubere hano hantu, mu izina rya Yesu Umwami, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Espoir. We will now hear welcome remarks from the President of KWIBUKA USA, Mr. Marcel Chaka. Through advocacy, remembrance, and survivor support, KWIBUKA USA continues to play an essential role in preserving memory and promoting education across the United States. Please join me in respectfully welcoming Mr. Marcel Chaka. Ubu tugiye kumva ijambo ry'ikaze ritangwa na Perezida wa KWIBUKA muri Amerika, Bwana Marcel Chaka.
Akoze cyane, Eliza. Good afternoon, Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda in the United States. Currently representing the Governor of Michigan, Peter Kalogros, representing the Senator Eliza, Mayor Stephen, the Mayor of Kentwood, and our host, Mayor David LeGrand for Grand Rapids, Senior Pastor Meg, our gracious host, and members of this congregation, our dear speakers, Boyana, Edward, Ashast, and fellow survivor, resilient one, Reverie Rurangwa, Mr. Caleb, my colleague who we worked together to organize this event, different leaders in the audience, members of KWIBUKA leadership, USRCA, and Rwanda community, fellow survivors, and dear friends of Rwanda. Good afternoon. My name is Marcel Chaka. I'm the president of KWIBUKA USA. KWIBUKA USA is a community of genocide survivors in the USA. We get together, commemorate the genocide, remember our fellow victims, and support each other. And this today means a lot for us. For survivors, remembrance is never easy for us. And when people like you choose to stand with us, it makes us feel supported. For some of you, maybe this may be your first commemoration that you just attended. So before we continue the program of today, I want to briefly help frame up the why we gathered today and prepare you for what is coming next, where you may see, hear, experience this afternoon. 32 years ago, in 1994, Rwanda experienced one of the darkest chapters in the humanity history. In just 100 days, more than 1 million Tutsi were systematically murdered. Children, parents, entire families were wiped out. The genocide against the Tutsi was not an accident. It was planned, organized, systematically and intentional to exterminate Tutsi. And it was fueled by hatred, division, humanization, and teaching Rwandans to divide ourselves. And the entire world were watching, because this was not a surprise. So this is why we gather here this year for KWIBUKA. KWIBUKA means remember, Kinyarwanda. Yes, remember means looking back, but it also means honoring lives that were stolen. It is standing with the survivors. It is protecting the truth. It is fighting denial. And it reminds us that the world can, it reminds the world that this can happen elsewhere, but also that we have to react, and it is our responsibility. As a survivor myself, I can tell you that days like this are very heavy. As the president of KWIBUKA, I'm also a survivor. I was 5 years old during the genocide, and I lost my father, my 2 brothers, and 1 sister, and 27 members of my family. Like many survivors, the names, faces, and memories we carry every day. We don't wait for the KWIBUKA. We carry them where we are. And this is why KWIBUKA is emotional for many of us here. To bring memory, to bring us back. We remember voices, we remember our families, and we remember people we loved who should still be here today. Some survivors we see carry trauma, fear, grief, and pain that words cannot explain. Some of us, people say that we're very quiet because we have no words to explain what we saw and what we experienced. So today, you may see tears, you may feel heaviness, some moments may be emotional, but it is okay, it's definitely okay, because for survivors, it is not simply history. Those are memory we live every day. So this weekend has been deeply meaningful for us, for our community. Yesterday, survivors, our families, and young people gathered for Survivors Reunion here in the same very church, which we're so grateful for you and the congregation to welcome us. We created a safe space for us for honest conversation about trauma, healing, resilience, and identity, and hope across many generations. So last night, again, we gathered in a night of remembrance where we reflected, we listened testimonies, we honored names and memories of our loved ones, not only how they were killed, but fully who they were, their values, their personalities, and we try to embody this in us because that's the way we should really remember. And today we continue the journey again. As we move through the program of this afternoon, you experience moments of remembrance, testimony, reflection, some music, of course, and historical context of what happened, and the conversation about memory, justice, healing, and resilience, but also prevention. You will hear survivors' testimony. You will hear reflection from scholars, leaders, and advocates. You hear message of remembrance, hope, and a corrective responsibility is humanity. And my hope is that everyone live here today, you live not just informed, but also transformed. Because genocide begins not with killing, but by words, slowly. And remembrance is how we push back against that darkness, is humanity. I also want to take a moment to thank the leaders of Michigan community, Rwandans who live right here, leaders of this great state, and we want to thank the city of Kentwood for officially welcoming us. I also want to thank the mayor of Grand Rapids, the governor of Michigan, for issuing official proclamation in remembrance of the genocide against the Tutsi. For many people, proclamation may feel like ceremonial, but for survivors, We carry this deeply and we appreciate it. This to us is said, we see you, we acknowledge your pain, we honor the lives that we lost, we stand with the truth, and we not forget. That's what it means for us survivors. So once the world abandoned us, by seeing that you recognize what happened, we feel that we are supported. I also want to thank everybody who attended today, who came to support us. This gesture for survivors means solidarity. But before and during the genocide, some churches were places of killing. But a church like this reminds us that we still have people who have humanity, who understand how Christianity should be really about love, about welcoming and serving each other. So KWIBUKA USA will organize a lot of events like this during commemoration. This year alone, we facilitated 33 commemoration events in the 22 states in this nation. In a partnership with Rwandans in multiple states, we get together as one and remember together. So to the young people who are in the audience, today I want to tell you that this belongs to you. One day, survivors like us will no longer be able to tell this story, but you will be able to carry the memory forward decades to come. You'll be the voice to protect the truth, to carry the memory. And please listen carefully, read the history, and stand against genocide denial. Today, we remember that we lost 1 million and more Tutsis in Rwanda, and it should never happen again. So I want to conclude by thanking you all on behalf of my fellow survivors, and again telling fellow survivors, thank you for your courage to come here today, because I know it is so personal, it is so hard, but remember, you are not alone. Thank you very much.
Arakoze Bwana Marcel Shyaka. Mu ncamake yatubwiye yuko duhuriye hano twibuka abarokotse jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Imyaka 30 ishize, u Rwanda rwanyuze mu mateka mabi ashaririye yatwaye ubuzima bw'Abatutsi barenga miliyoni. Turabibuka uyu munsi. Yavuze ko ubwo jenoside yakorerwaga Abatutsi yari afite imyaka 5, yabuze abagera kuri 27. Abarokotse jenoside bafite umutwaro ukomeye wo gutwara ibikomere, kwibuka n'amateka yacu. Yagarutse ku munsi w'ejo aho abarokotse jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi harimo abakiri bato, abanyuze muri jenoside n'abarokotse bahuriye hamwe baganira ku mateka yacu. Kwibuka ntabwo ari ibidusubiza inyuma, ahubwo ni ibidukomeza. Turashimira Meya wa Grand Rapids kuba yaremeye jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi ku mugaragaro. Bifite igisobanuro gikomeye kuko twumva mudukomeje kandi muri kumwe n'abarokotse jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Kuba twibukiye mu rusengero uyu munsi bifite icyo bisobanuye, kubera insengero mu gihe cya jenoside zakoreshwaga zicirwamo Abatutsi, ariko ubu niho turi kwibukira. Turashimira ubuyobozi bwa Kentwood Community Church. We now enter a sacred moment of remembrance through light of hope and a moment of silence. Candles symbolize memory, dignity, resilience, and hope. Even in moments of profound darkness, light endures. As these candles are lit, we remember the innocent lives that were taken during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We remember the families that were destroyed, the communities that were devastated, and the survivors who continue to carry memories with extraordinary courage. And we reaffirm our responsibility to preserve truth, fight denial, and ensure that such atrocities never happen again. At this time, I invite the Ambassador of Rwanda to the United States, Ambassador Mathilde Mukantabana, Mayor of Kentwood, Mr. Stephen Kepley, Mayor of Grand Rapids, Mr. David Legrand, President of KWIBUKA USA, Mr. Marcel Shaka, and President of USRCA Michigan, Mr. Caleb Wagaba, who will initiate the Light of Hope.
Imitima igasubira mu nda, imitima igasubira mu bitereko. Urumuri, urumuri rutazima, urumuri rw'ubuzima.
Everyone else can now use their candles. Thank you so much. Thank you. We will now observe a moment of silence, and we kindly ask all guests, if you're able, please stand up. Ubu tugeze mu mwanya wo gufata umunota wo kwibuka. Twibuke. Thank you. You may now take your seats. We will now watch a short historical reflection film presenting the context, the truth, and the enduring lessons of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. As we watch, let us reflect not only on what happened, but also on the responsibility we share to confront hatred, indifference, and denial wherever they exist. Please turn your attention to the screen.
For much of the world, Rwanda first existed in 1994. And yet, our story starts long before this. Before colonialism, Rwandans had a rich culture, one language, and the people were united around their own organic form of governance. This all changed when colonial powers chose to control Rwandans by ethnicity, creating division and conflict where none had existed previously. This division grew into hatred and violence, culminating in the genocide against the Tutsi, where over 1 million people were murdered in 100 days.
Tukabona interahamwe zirirukanka bambaye amashara zamu zifite ubuhiri zifite imipanga aho mu isoko zibyina nta ukanda burende bahiga abatutsi mbese mu buryo bukomeye.
Muri jenoside 94 banyiciye imiryango yanjye mu bana 9 nabyaye hasigayemo utwana 2.
Abana ba Mariya 2 n'umugabo wa Mariya abo bose badusanze kuri barriere twe turagera kubica.
This genocide was long planned by the government of the time, who used education and the media to divide Rwandans, creating the conditions for the genocide to happen. The preparation of the genocide and of the 100 days of killings happened in full view of the world, who stood by, watched, and did nothing. No one came to Rwanda's rescue. The killings were only stopped when the Rwanda Patriotic Front overthrew the genocidal government. From that moment, Rwandans began the long, hard road to recovery, healing, and reconciliation.
Mu mwaka wa 2004 nibwo nafashe icyemezo cyo gusaba imbabazi Mariya. Mfati umwanzuro. Numvaga mvuga nti se wenda yaba ntari namusanzeyo kuko numvaga mfite ubwoba. Nkongera nkavuga nti se ubundi amaherezo yazaba yahe. Ngize amahirwe rero ubwo nuvuga ngo Mariya asanze ariyo. Nibwira mbwiye nti uko biri kose urabizi ngiye ndi mu bantu nyine bakwiciye ariko noneho ndagira ngo umpe imbabazi.
Byagiye bigenda gahoro uko dusabana, uko duhura, uko tuvugana, uko twigishwa hace mu nyigisho nyinshi cyane. Ntabwo byari byoroshye.
To heal the wounds of a nation where neighbors killed neighbors, and even some family members turned on each other, the new Rwanda had to find a way to deliver justice for the victims, which could manage the scale of the crimes, and could also heal the torn social fabric of our society. So, we turned to our history for the answer. We set up Gacaca tribunals, a traditional form of community justice where citizens elected inyangamugayo, men and women of integrity in their communities, who heard almost 2 million genocide cases. This not only ensured that justice was delivered, but also established the truth of the killings. Reconciliation could begin at last.
Gacaca zimaze kugeramo abaturage tugakorana bari abafunguye bakaza. Bagashinjanya. Kanaka uwe kanaka twajyanye mu gitero. Uwe kanaka twajyanye mu gitero. Ngo kuko abakoze jenoside, ngo kuko bagaragaye.
Abenshi ro muri Gacaca byatumye bamenya uko ababo bishwe barihangana baravyakira bamenya naho bajuguye.
We asked that the genocide survivors make huge sacrifices by putting aside their desire for retribution in favor of forgiveness and reconciliation. And we asked all Rwandans to leave the ethnic divisions in the past and embrace a future of Umuhango, where we are all Rwandan. Rwanda is still a work in progress. It is up to the next generations to learn the true story of our past, to protect against genocide, denial, and hate, and keep the memory and the lessons of our history alive.
En fait, le négationnisme est en pleine expansion sur Internet, sur les réseaux sociaux, puis sur Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Le discours n'a pas changé. Certaines personnes vont, par exemple, prétendre que le génocide n'a pas été planifié, mais que les gens se sont mis en colère et ont commencé à tuer. Il faut qu'on soit plus nombreux à protéger la vérité, à protéger l'histoire du génocide contre les Tutsis sur ces plateformes-là.
For our friends around the world, we thank you for continuing to stand with us and ask you to share Rwanda's story and what we've learned about division and reconciliation at a time when the world seems increasingly more fractured.
Thank you for reflecting with us. We now enter one of the most important moments of today's commemoration, survivor testimony. Testimony is memory, courage, and carries truth across generations. Through survivors, history continues to speak. Through listening, we honor that truth and protect it from silence and denial. It is my honor to welcome Mr. Reverien Rurangwa, who is a survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi and went through unimaginable pain and loss, yet chose to transform his history into a voice of truth, memory, and resilience. Ubu tugeze mu mwanya ukomeye wo gutega amatwi umuhamya w'uwarokotse jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, Bwana Reverien Rurangwa. Umwanya ni uwanyu.
Muraho mwese, nitwa Rurangwa Reverien, nkaba naracitse ku icumu rya jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi 1994 1994. Nari mfite imyaka 15. Uko mumbona aha siko navutse. Inkovu zose mubona ni imipanga y'Abahutu. Akaboko k'ibumoso baragaciye, mu mbavu z'ibumoso mfite amacumu 2, ku rutugu mfite nta mpungano y'umwanzi. Ijisho ry'ibumoso ni ikirahure. Byose uko kubera uko navutse. Ngiye gutemanya mu Gifaransa kuko nicyo maîtrise kurusha English. Munyihangane.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nicole Karekezi, and I'll be summarizing, or at least attempting to summarize his testimony in English. What he was saying was that his name is Reverien Rurangwa, and he'll be our survivor who's giving his testimony this afternoon. He was describing the horrific tragedies he went through in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. He was showing that his left eye had been taken out as well as dismembered in different parts of his body. He will be sharing his testimony in French as he left Rwanda when he was really young. He was 15 and went to Switzerland. So French is the language he feels best to express himself. So please bear with us. I'll let him give sort of paragraphs of his testimony, and then I'll go ahead and give you what that summary is. Thank you so much, and I'll allow him his time. Please go ahead.
Je m'appelle Reverien Rurangwa. j'habite en Suisse. Je suis un père d'un petit garçon de 3 ans qui est né au mois d'avril en 2023. 32 ans après. Pour certains d'entre vous, c'est toute une vie. Pour moi, c'est le nombre d'années que j'ai passé à être 2 personnes à la fois, celui que j'étais avant et ce que le génocide a fait de moi. Je suis rescapé du génocide de Tutsi au Rwanda en 1994. J'avais 15 ans. Je témoigne depuis des années dans les écoles, des universités, des parlements, des cérémonies de commémoration comme aujourd'hui. J'ai écrit un livre qui s'appelle « Génocidé ». Ce mot, je l'ai choisi moi-même parce que génocide, c'est ce que je suis. Un génocide n'efface pas seulement ceux qui l'ont tué. Il manque pour toujours ceux qui survivent. Je vous parle des morts parce que les morts ne peuvent plus parler et parce que tant qu'il y a des vivants pour témoigner, il y a une chance que le monde se souvienne.
My name is Reverien Rurangwa, and I live in Switzerland. I'm a father of a little boy who just turned 3 this April. 32 years later. For some of you, that's an entire lifetime. For me, it is the number of years I have spent being 2 people at once. The person I was before and the person the genocide made me become. I have been sharing my testimony for years in schools, in universities, parliaments, and commemoration ceremonies such as this. I wrote a book called Genocide, or Génocidé. Genocided. I chose that word because genocided is what I am. A genocide does not only erase those it kills, it marks forever those who survive it. I speak for the dead because the dead can no longer speak. And because as long as there are survivors to testify, there is still a chance that the world will remember.
Je suis né le 3 juin 1978 à Mugina, un village situé à une vingtaine de kilomètres au sud de Kigali, au cœur du Rwanda. Mugina, ce mot, pour moi, a 2 sens. Il signifie mon enfance, ma famille, la vie d'avant, et il signifie aussi la colline où tout s'est arrêté. Avant 1994, j'avais une famille comme tout le monde, une grande famille, comme beaucoup de familles rwandaises. Un père, une mère, des frères et sœurs, des oncles, des tantes, des cousins, 43 personnes qui portaient le même sang que moi, qui vivaient près de moi, qui mangeaient avec moi. J'avais 15 ans et j'étais heureux. C'est important de dire ça parce que quand on parle souvent du génocide comme d'une catastrophe venue de nulle part, comme une tempête, mais avant, il y avait une vie, il y avait des enfants qui jouaient, des femmes qui chantaient, des hommes qui travaillaient leurs champs. Il y avait moi-même, Révérien, 15 ans, qui pensait à son avenir. Je savais que nous étions Tutsis. Je savais qu'il y avait des tensions dans le pays, une longue histoire de discrimination, de violence cyclique contre les Tutsis depuis l'indépendance. Mais le Rwanda, c'était aussi mon pays, c'est notre pays à tous. Ce que je ne savais pas encore, c'est que personne, peut-être, ne voulait vraiment croire ce que les gens que je connaissais, les voisins, les gens qui avaient partagé notre table, planifiaient depuis des mois notre extermination. Pas notre défaite, pas notre exil, notre extermination. Le mot est important, il faut le prononcer.
I'm going to speak to you about my life before the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. I was born on June 3rd, 1978 in Mugina, a village located 20 kilometers south of Kigali in the heart of Rwanda. Mugina, for me, it has two meanings. It means my childhood, my family, my life before. And it also means the hill where everything ended. Before 1994, I had a large family, like everyone, like many Rwandans. A father, a mother, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins. 43 people who shared my blood, who lived near me, and who ate with me. I was 15 and I was happy. That is important to say because people often speak of the genocide as if it was a catastrophe that came out of nowhere, like a storm. But before there was life, there were children playing, women singing, and men working in the fields. There was me, Révérien, 15 years old, thinking about my future. I knew we were Tutsi. I knew there were tensions in the country, a long history of discrimination and recurring violence against the Tutsi since independence. But Rwanda was also my country. It was our country. It was all ours. What I didn't know yet, what perhaps no one truly wanted to believe, was that people I knew, neighbors, people who had shared our table, had been planning our extermination for months. Not our defeat, not our exile, our extermination. The word extermination matters, and it must be spoken. Now I'm going to take you through the journey of, he's going to take you rather, through the journey throughout the genocide.
Le 6 avril 1994, l'avion du président Bermana est abattu au-dessus de Kigali. Dès cette nuit-là, les tueries commencent. Ce n'est pas une réaction spontanée. C'est un déclenchement. Les listes étaient prêtes. Les machettes avaient été distribuées. La radio de Mille Collines donnait les ordres. Autour de nous, à Mugina, la terreur monte de jour en jour. Les Tutsis se réfugiaient là où ils pouvaient. Dans les églises, dans les collines, on pense que la masse et le nombre nous protégera. On se dit, ils ne peuvent pas tuer tout le monde. On avait tort. Le 20 avril 1994, vers 16 h, sur la colline de Mugina, des miliciens, des complices arrivent, ils sont nombreux. Ils ont des machettes, des gourdins, des lances. Je ne savais pas. Je ne veux pas vous dire, décrire en détail ce qui s'est passé. Pas parce que je veux vous partager mais parce que certaines choses ne peuvent pas vraiment être dites. Elles peuvent seulement être portées. Ce que je ne peux vous dire, ceci. Ce jour-là, 43 personnes, membres de ma famille, ont été massacrées sous mes yeux. Mon père, ma mère, mes frères et sœurs, mes oncles, mes tantes, les enfants, des bébés. Et moi, j'ai été frappé à la machette plusieurs fois. On m'a laissé pour mort parmi les miens. J'avais 15 ans. J'ai porté en moi ce mot que je ne comprenais pas encore pleinement. Survivant. Je veux vous dire quelque chose que peu de gens comprennent vraiment. Survivre à un génocide, ce n'est pas une victoire. Ce n'est pas un miracle qui vous remplit la gratitude. C'est d'abord une question terrible que vous posez chaque matin. Pour moi, pourquoi moi et pourquoi pas eux? Pendant 2 semaines, après le massacre, je gisais parmi les morts, blessé gravement, défiguré, sans pouvoir bouger. Ce sont les troupes du Front patriotique rwandais qui m'ont secouru en juin 1994. Quand ils ont repris le contrôle du pays et mis fin au génocide. J'avais survécu à l'insupportable, mais le corps que j'avais, le visage que j'avais, n'était plus tout à fait le même. Les cicatrices, les mutilations, et sera visible pour toujours. Mon corps, mon visage, est une pièce à conviction et un témoignage vivant que personne ne peut nier.
On April 6, 1994, President Habyarimana's plane was shot down over Kigali. That very night, the killings began. It was not a spontaneous reaction, it was a trigger. The lists had been made and they were ready. The machetes had been distributed, and Khadio Milkolin was giving orders on how to exterminate us. Around us in Mugina, terror grew day by day. Tutsis sought refuge wherever they could, in churches, on hills. We thought that the crowd, the numbers would protect us. We told ourselves, they can't possibly kill everyone. We were wrong. On April 20th, 1994, around 4 in the afternoon, on the hill of Mugina, the militias and their accomplices arrived. There were many, many of them. They carried machetes, clubs, spears. I will not describe in detail what happened, not because I want to spare you, but because some things cannot truly be spoken. They can only be carried. What I can tell you is this. That day, 43 members of my family were massacred before my eyes, 43. My father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, my uncles, my aunts, children, babies. And as you can see, I was struck with machetes several times. I was left for dead among bodies of my own family. I was 15 years old. I carried within me a word I did not fully yet understand, a survivor. I will tell you something few people truly understand. Surviving a genocide is not a victory. It is not a miracle that fills you with gratitude. It is a terrible question you ask yourself every morning. Why me? Why not them? For weeks after the massacre, I lay among the dead, gravely wounded, disfigured, unable to move. It was the troops of the Rwandan Patriotic Front who rescued me in June 1994, when they regained control of the country and put the end to the genocide. I had survived the unbearable, but the body I had, the face I had, were no longer quite the same. The scars, as you can see today, 32 years later, the mutilations, they're still here. They're visible forever. My body has become evidence, a living testimony that no one can deny.
Le 24 décembre 1994, je suis arrivé en Suisse grâce à une ONG qui s'appelle Sentinelle. J'avais 16 ans. Je ne parlais pas français. Je ne connaissais personne. Je portais dans ma chair, dans ma mémoire, des choses que je ne pouvais partager avec personne autour de moi. Au cours des années suivantes, j'ai subi 17 opérations chirurgicales. J'ai passé près de 2 ans à l'hôpital, des médecins, des infirmières, des familles suisses m'ont entouré avec une humanité que je n'oublierai jamais. Luc Duprat est devenu pour moi un père de substitution, sa famille, une famille de substitution. On reconstruit encore avec du temps et la science, mais on ne construit pas une famille. On ne reconstruit pas 43 personnes. Pendant des années, j'ai cherché comment vivre avec ça, comment sortir du lit chaque matin, comment regarder les autres vivre sans que la douleur devienne une rage. J'ai appris le français, j'ai appris à témoigner, j'ai écrit un livre génocidé avec une main et un œil en 2006. Écrire ce livre a été l'une des choses les plus difficiles et les plus nécessaires de ma vie, parce que mettre les mots sur l'horreur, c'est arracher l'erreur de soi un peu, c'est aussi la rendre transmissible, la rendre réelle pour ceux qui ne l'ont pas vécu. Je vais vous parler d'une chose que les gens demandent souvent, le pardon. Au Rwanda, après le génocide, des programmes ont été mis en place pour encourager la réconciliation. Le monde attendait des rescapés qu'ils pardonnent, qu'ils tendent la main, qu'ils aident à reconstruire le pays avec ceux qui avaient participé au meurtre de leur famille. Je comprends la nécessité politique de cette démarche. Je comprends que le Rwanda devait avancer. Mais pour moi, personnellement, je ne pardonne pas l'impardonnable. Je ne pardonne pas, je ne pardonnerai jamais. Ce n'est pas de la haine, c'est de la lucidité car l'impardonnable ne se pardonne pas. Pardonner à un génocide, c'est accepter. Qui n'a pas demandé pardonner? Comment pardonner celui qui ne l'a jamais demandé? Qui nie, même 32 ans après. Encore, qui dorment tranquillement pendant que les rescapés portent leur traumatisme seuls, ce serait mentir. Ce serait trahir les nôtres. Je ne suis pas là pour représenter une vision officielle du vivre ensemble. Je suis là pour dire la vérité telle que je la vis. Et la vérité, c'est que la justice n'a pas été pleinement rendue. Des meilleurs criminels, des milliers de criminels ont bénéficié du processus, les fameux gachacha. Ils ont été libérés, vivent parfois à quelques kilomètres, quelques mètres même de leurs victimes. On demande de rescaper l'impossible. Est-ce que tu crois en Dieu? Non. Depuis le 20 avril, je ne crois plus en Dieu. Je lui ai posé la question comme saint Thomas, d'aucuns l'avaient formulé. Si Dieu était infiniment bon, il n'aurait pas de mal dans ce monde. Or, il y a du mal, il y a eu le génocide, alors Dieu absent, ou impuissant, ou inexistant. Je ne suis pas en colère contre cette idée, je suis simplement honnête. Mais voici en quoi je crois. Je crois à la mémoire. Je crois en témoignage. Je crois que chaque être humain a une responsabilité morale de ne pas détourner les yeux de l'erreur commise en son nom ou dans son silence. J'ai parfois été attaqué physiquement en Belgique, en Suisse, par des compatriotes qui voulaient me faire taire. Pour un négationniste, je suis un témoin dangereux, gênant. Les rescapés, on est des témoins gênants. On dérange tout le monde. On dérange les Hutus. On dérange la communauté internationale qui n'a rien fait. Je ne suis pas seulement un survivant, je suis une preuve vivante que le génocide a bien eu lieu, que ce n'était pas une guerre civile, comme on le prétend souvent, que ce n'était pas une réaction spontanée, que c'était une extermination planifiée. Mon corps dit ce que les archives écrivent. Et puis, la vie a continué, malgré tout. Au-delà de tout, ce que j'aurais cru possible. En 2019, je me suis marié au Rwanda avec Jeanne, elle-même rescapée parmi les rescapés. Deux êtres qui savent ce qu'est insupportable et qui ont choisi de vivre quand même. Notre fils s'appelle Ethan Muzigura. C'est le nom de mon père qui ne connaîtra jamais. Mais son nom, il le portera. Avec son nom, il portera la mémoire. Quand je joue avec mon fils, je vis pas simplement, je survis, je vis la preuve. Sur le mur de mon appartement à la Chaux-de-Fonds, il y a une phrase encadrée, je vous la lis. Ils ont voulu nous enterrer, mais ils ne savaient pas que nous étions des graines.
On December 24th, 1994, I arrived in Switzerland thanks to the NGO Centenaire. I was 16 years old. I did not speak French. I knew no one. I carried my flesh and in my memory things I could not share with anyone around me. Over the following years, I underwent 17 surgeries. I spent nearly 2 years in the hospital. Doctors, nurses, and Swiss families surrounded me with a humanity I will never forget. Luc Dupraz became a substitute father to me. His family became a substitute family. A body can be rebuilt with time and science, but a family cannot be rebuilt. You cannot rebuild 43 people. For years, I have searched for a way to live with this. How to get out of bed each morning, how to watch others live without telling the pain that became rage. I learned French, I learned how to testify. I wrote Genocide, a book that was published in 2006. Writing that book was one of the most difficult but most necessary things I've ever done. Because putting to words to horror is a way of tearing some of the horror out of myself. It's also a way of making it transmissible, making it real for those who did not live it. People often ask me about forgiveness. In Rwanda, after the genocide I was portrayed, programs were put in place to encourage reconciliation. The world expected survivors to forgive, to extend a hand, to help rebuild the country with those who had participated in murdering their families. I understand the political necessity of that. I understand that Rwanda had and needed to move forward. But personally, to answer that question, I do not forgive. I will not forgive. This is not hatred, it is lucidity. The unforgivable is not forgivable. To forgive a genocidaire who has not asked for forgiveness, who still denies, who still sleeps peacefully while survivors carry their trauma alone, that would be a lie I would be telling. It would be a betrayal of the dead. I have to preface this by saying I'm not here to represent an official vision of living together. I'm here to tell the truth as I live it. And the truth is that justice has not been fully served. Thousands of criminals benefited from the Gacaca process, were released, and sometimes live only a few kilometers from families of their victims. People also ask me, do you believe in God? The answer is no. Since April 20th, 1994, I no longer believe in God. I ask myself the question as St. Thomas Aquinas once framed it. If God were infinitely good, evil would not exist in the world. And yet evil exists. There was a genocide. So God is either present or rather absent, powerless or non-existent. I'm not angry about that idea. I'm simply honest. But here is what I do believe in. I believe in memory. I believe in testimony. I believe every human has a moral responsibility not to look away from horror committed in their name or in their silence. I've been physically attacked after the genocide against the Tutsi in Belgium, in Switzerland, by compatriots who wanted to silence me. To a genocide denier, I am a dangerous living testimony. I'm not only a survivor, I'm living proof that the genocide did happen, that it was not a civil war, that it was not a spontaneous reaction, that it was a planned extermination. My body says what archives write. Despite all that struggle, life continued, despite everything, beyond anything I thought possible. In 2019, I married Jeanne in Rwanda, herself a survivor. Survivors among survivors. Two human beings who know what the unbearable is and still who chose to live. We have a son by the name of Ethan Muzigura. Muzigura is the name of his grandfather, my father, who he will never know. But he will carry that name, and with that name, he will carry memory. When I play with my son, I live again. Not merely survive, I live. The genocide's plan was to exterminate us. They wanted to erase us, the Tutsis, but they failed because my son is alive, and he's proof of that. On the wall of my apartment in Switzerland, there is a framed quote that says, "They wanted to bury us, and they did not know that we were seeds."
Vous êtes ici en Michigan. Vous êtes peut-être loin géographiquement du Rwanda. Vous vous demandez peut-être ce que cette histoire a à voir avec vous. Elle a tout à voir avec nous. Le génocide des Tutsis n'est pas seulement une tragédie rwandaise, c'est une tragédie humaine. Elle a eu lieu parce que le monde l'a laissé faire. En 1994, la communauté internationale savait, les Nations Unies savaient. Certains gouvernements savaient. Les forces de l'ONU présentes sur place ont reçu l'ordre de ne pas intervenir. Les soldats ont regardé. 100 jours, plus d'1 million de personnes tuées. Le génocide le plus rapide de l'histoire de l'humanité. Alors, quand on commémore, ce n'est pas seulement pour pleurer les morts, c'est aussi pour rappeler au monde sa responsabilité. Pour dire, vous n'avez pas agi, et ce silence, là aussi, il a du sang sur les mains. Je témoigne depuis 32 ans. Je continue parce que c'est ma mission, pas par choix au départ, par obligation, parce que les 43 membres de ma famille, massacrés sous mes yeux, n'ont pas de choix. Je suis leur voix. Je témoigne aussi parce que les génocides ne surgissent pas du néant. Ils se construisent, ils se préparent, ils s'annoncent. Il y a toujours une propagande qui déshumanise. Il y a toujours une liste dressée à l'avance. Il y a toujours des gens qui regardent et qui se taisent. Aujourd'hui encore, dans le monde, des groupes sont déshumanisés, des minorités sont ciblées par des discours de haine, des populations entières sont menacées pendant que d'autres regardent ailleurs. La vigilance n'est pas une option, c'est un devoir. Je terminerai par ici. Je suis arrivé en Suisse à 16 ans, brisé, mutilé, seul. On m'a reconstruit, pas entièrement. Personne ne peut faire ça, mais assez pour que je puisse me lever, parler, écrire, aimer, avoir un fils. Je suis mort, vivant, qui a choisi de vivre. Je vous demande, à vous qui m'écoutez aujourd'hui, de faire quelque chose de simple, mais d'essentiel. Souvenez-vous, parlez autour de vous. Ne laisse pas la mémoire du génocide de Tutsi devenir une note de bas de page de l'histoire. Plus d'1 million de personnes ont été tuées en 100 jours parce que le monde n'a pas voulu voir. Voyez, rappelez-vous, transmettez pour que personne n'oublie et ne sombre dans l'indifférence et le je m'en foutisme. Je vous remercie.
You're in Michigan, in America today. You may be geographically far from Rwanda. You may wonder what this story has to do with you. It has everything to do with you. The genocide against the Tutsi in 1994 is not only a Rwandan tragedy, it is a human tragedy. And it happened because the world allowed it to happen. In 1994, genocide against the Tutsi, when the genocide was happening, the international community knew. The United Nations knew, certain governments knew. The UN forces were present and they were ordered not to intervene. Soldiers watched for 100 days. More than 1 million people killed, the fastest genocide in history. So when we commemorate, it's not only to mourn the dead, our families, it is also to remind the world of its responsibility, to say, you did not act, and that silence too has blood on its hands. I have testified for the past 32 years. I continue up until today because it is my mission, not by choice at first, but by obligation. Because 43 members of my family who were massacred have no voice, and I am their voice. I also testify because genocides do not emerge from nowhere. They are built, they're prepared, announced. There is always propaganda that dehumanizes. There is always a list prepared in advance. There are always people who watch and remain silent. Even today, around the world, groups are still being dehumanized. Minorities are targeted by hate speech. Entire populations are threatened while others look away. Vigilance, it is not optional. It is a duty. And I will end with this. I arrived in Switzerland at 16, broken, mutilated, and alone. People have helped me rebuild over years. Not completely, no one can do that, but enough so that I could stand and speak and write and love and have a son. I'm a living dead man who chose to live. And I ask you, people who are listening today, to do something very simple but essential. Remember, KWIBUKA. Speak about this around you. Do not let the memory of the genocide against the Tutsi become another footnote in history. More than 1 million people were killed in 100 days because the world chose not to see. So please, see, remember, and pass it on, so that no one forgets and no one sinks into indifference. Long live memory. Thank you so much for listening to us.
ijambo rya nyuma nakwisabira abaresikape ababuze ababo bose muri jenoside yakorewe abatutsi, mukomere, reste debout. Abacu aho bari nta kindi badusaba, ntabwo badusaba ibya mirenge. Icyo badusaba ni ukubasubiza agaciro, bagasubiza agaciro nyagaciro bambuwe n'abahutu. Dushyigikirane, abagabo mukomere ku muheto, abakobwa n'abadamu mukenyere mukomeze, unaniwe tumusindagize, dukomezanye urugendo maze tuzaruhuke ari uko abacu barenganuwe. Vive la mémoire.
Thank you very much, Reverend Rurangwa. As I mentioned to you before we start, survivors will live with pain, deep pain. His face has to be reconstructed to look like that for many more years. And now he's sharing his memory. We have women who were raped, and out of rape, they have kids. Those kids, they have history. They have to live their life. So survivors will live with a lot of pain, and on both spectrum. But also, healing and forgiveness is a personal journey. It's like faith. You can't force it. It is genuine. It is organic. When you talk about healing and how survivors need to continue to be next to them, to comfort them, and accompany us in this healing journey, this is what we are talking about. And thank you, Reverie, for sharing all of that. And he ended telling all of us, mostly survivors, to stay strong and be resilient. I will also add that the phrase he was using, saying Abahutu, meant killers, because all Hutus did not commit genocide. In fact, some of them saved survivors. I would say that what Reverie mentioned, it's deep, it's a painful, personal story of survival, but also resilience. If you're a survivor in the audience or at home, please get close to them. Be a good neighbor. Be a good fellow. Accompany them in their journey of healing. As I mentioned, it is personal and you can't rush it. For you who are here, people of faith, we encourage you to pray for survivors, because it's so hard to believe, like Javier, when he went through all of this, but also we know that hope still exists. Good people exist. We would also mention that many survivors still live in Rwanda, next to those who committed genocide. It is so painful, but also some have made a tremendous progress in reconciliation, in forgiveness. Not all, but many have done that. And we also recognize the effort that was made after the genocide, where the genocide has stopped. Now genocide is no longer happening again in Rwanda. For survivors, we feel and we see that as hope for tomorrow. But also that hope comes with the responsibility of all of us to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Thank you, Brother Reverie.
Arakoze Reverien Rurangwa umaze kudusangiza amateka akomeye yanyuzemo mu gihe cya Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi n'ubutwari bukomeye. Turamushimiye. Mu ncamake yatubwiye ko ubwo Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi yatangiraga yari afite imyaka 15. Mu gihe cya Jenoside interahamwe zamwambuye ingingo ze z'umubiri harimo ukuboko, ijisho, ndetse abicanyi bamusigiye ibikomere byinshi ku mubiri we. Mbere ya Jenoside yari afite abavandimwe bagera mu 43 harimo n'ababyeyi be ndetse n'abandi bo mu muryango we. Igihe yari muto yabonye ubwicanyi bwinshi bwakorerwaga abari mu bwoko bw'Abatutsi. Aho avuka ku Mugina ubwo Jenoside yatangiraga, Abatutsi benshi bahungiye ahantu hatandukanye harimo n'insengero. Abagera muri 43 nk'uko nabivuze bo mu muryango we barishwe bose bazira uko bavutse, harimo abana bato, abavandimwe be, ababyeyi be, ba nyirasenge na ba nyirarume. Kurokoka kwe ntibyari impuhwe kuko nawe yasaga n'uwapfuye, kuko abicanyi bibwiye ko yapfuye. Reverien ubu atuye mu gihugu cy'Ubusuwisi, arubatse, afite umwana w'imyaka 3. Amateka ye ashaririye yanyuzemo mu gihe cya Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi yayakusanyirije mu gitabo yise Jenoside. Abashaka kumenya amateka ye byimbitse bashobora kuza kugura igitabo cye muri lobby aho twinjiriye birahari. For those who wish to learn more about Reverien's testimony, we have Reverien's book in the lobby at the exhibition. We now continue our remembrance through the reading of names and messages of hope presented by the members of the Rwandan youth community. Each name represents a life, a story, a future, and a memory that continues to live within us. Ubu tugeze mu mwanya wo kwibuka abazize Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi mu mazina yabo ndetse no gutanga ubutumwa bw'icyizere. Birakorwa n'urubyiruko rw'Abanyarwanda. Buri zina risobanuye ubuzima, inkuru ndetse n'ahazaza. Ni ikimenyetso cy'uko amateka atazasibangana. Murakoze.
La force de la jeunesse a été utilisée pour détruire notre pays. Aujourd'hui, nous l'utilisons pour nous reconstruire dans le respect de nos meilleurs valeurs. Nous nous souvenons de la famille de Kayonga Boniface, Mukahigiro Ansila, Munyaburanga Eugène, Munyaburanga Grace, Mugore Wera Françoise. Nous nous souvenons, aimable Umuhango et Musangwa Richard. Vos noms ne s'effaceront jamais tant que nous serons là.
Remembering teaches us how resilient human beings are and how powerful we become when we stand together for something we believe in. We remember the family of Rudasingwa Alois, his wife Mukantangara Specios, and their 4 children. We remember Anita Mukarukundo and Madeline Kaberanya, Mukaruranga Adele, and Mukankubito Edith. Your names will never fade as long as we are still alive.
Humura Rwanda rwacu, abawe turi inyuma yawe. Tuzakubaka, tuguhanagura amarira warize, tuguhindura igihugu gitemba amata n'ubuki, kandi cyuzuyemo amahoro n'urukundo. Turibuka umuryango wa Rwamfizi, Emerette Mukangondo, Marie Colette Kayitesi, Jeanne d'Arc Uwamariya, Dafrose Mukamusoni n'abana be Irene na Samantha. Turibuka Shobore Dismas, Rutsarika Auguste n'abana be 3. Amazina yanyu ntazazima tukiriho.
Rwanda, tu es plus qu'un leader, car tu as su avancer malgré des jambes sans force. Voilà pourquoi nous commémorons tes enfants massacrés. Nous nous souvenons de la famille de Daisaba Damas, Tsendiumva Donat, Mjayezu Domina, Munga Jean Gilbert et Ouassé Delphine. Nous nous souvenons, Raissa et Isabelle, vos noms ne s'effaceront jamais tant que nous serons là.
Here we have experienced pain and lost our siblings, but let unity strengthen us as we honor those who died by choosing to change and inspire future generations. We remember the family of Matthias and his wife Maria and their 8 children, and we remember Kawaiza Jean, Kunziza Paul, Mukanyarwanya Peace, Mutaganga Aloise. Your names will never fade as long as we're still alive.
Rwanda, twebwe abana bawe turahari ngo tuguhanagura amarira barizo. Imbaraga z'ejo hazaza ni twe. Humura ntibizongera ukundi. Turibuka umuryango wa Biniga, umugore wa Françoise n'abana be Yovita, Egide na Aimable. Turibuka Kabega Laurence na Mukabuyigo Chantal. Amazina yanyu ntazazima tukiriho.
Thank you to our youth. We now transition into our panel discussion centered on this year's theme, KWIBUKA, memory, justice, and the legacy we carry forward. This conversation brings together voices from healing, survivor advocacy, historical scholarship, justice, and intergenerational remembrance to reflect on the enduring lessons and responsibilities that emerge from genocide memory. At this time, I'll invite our moderator, Dr. Favorite Iradukunda, to come forward and welcome our panelists. Ubu twinjiye mu kiganiro gishingiye ku nsanganyamatsiko igira iti kwibuka ubutabera n'umurage wo gukomeza gusigasira amateka. Iki kiganiro kirahuza ibitekerezo bitandukanye ku gukira ibikomere, ubutabera, amateka, ubuhamya ndetse no gukomeza guhererekanya umurage wo kwibuka mu bisekuru bizaza. Murakoze.
My name is Favorite Iradukunda, as introduced just a few moments ago. I'm a survivor and honored to serve as the Vice President of KWIBUKA USA, and I'll be moderating the panel. It is my honor to welcome our speakers today. Please know that I'm going to read their bios, but we have shortened their bios to spend more time on our conversation today. You can find more about them online. I will start by introducing Dr. Shast Uwihoreye. Dr. Shast, please come forward. Please have a seat. Dr. Uwihoreye is a Rwandan clinical psychologist and founder of Wisenga Nimanzi, an organization supporting orphaned survivors and youth affected by the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. He is a leading voice on trauma, healing, mental health, and intergenerational recovery. I will now introduce Dr. Boyana Coulibaly. Dr. Boyana, please come forward. Thank you. Dr. Coulibaly is a scholar whose work focuses on the history of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, narratives of resilience, and the persistence challenge of denial. She contributes research and public scholarship that centers survivors' truth. Thank you for being with us today. I'll now introduce Mr. Edward Kayihura. Mr. Kayihura, please come forward. Thank you. Mr. Edward Kayihura is a survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi and co-author of Inside the Hotel Rwanda. He is an attorney and transitional justice expert. He has worked extensively on accountability, post-conflict reconstruction, and survivor advocacy. Thank you all for being with us. I'll now move closer to my seat so that we can begin our conversation. Dr. Uwihoreye, I'll ask you the first question. Many survivors today are aging while still carrying deep trauma. At the same time, younger generations are inheriting pain they did not experience. What are you seeing today within survivors' family and community, and how should we better support long-term healing? Thank you.
Thank you, Favorite. I don't know if I will start with trauma or starting with resilience. When I was hearing Revelier, I was thinking, will I start by trauma and mental health issues, or will I start by resilience? Allow me a little bit to talk in Kinyarwanda.
Yes, please.
Kubera ko ari cyo numva cyane ndabona na hano muri sala aribo benshi turimo natekereje gutangira ku kibazo nk'icyabajije kuvuga ihungabana n'ibibazo by'ubuzima bwo mu mutwe ariko ndavuga ntari kuhahera ku budaheranwa nkurikije ibyo Reveri yavuze kuko nibazaga ngo survivors of genocide nari nazanye n'ibistatistike by'ubushakashatsi noneho ngezeho ndibaza ariko survivors of genocide who is not affected in terms of mental health, a survivor who is not affected. Ndebye uko Reveriye ahagaze akomeye atubwira ndavuga ntari kumenya hari n'imbaraga byatumye njya mu migani ya Kinyarwanda kuko ndayikunda. I don't know if younger people will be able to understand. There is a Rwandan proverb saying that when erosion comes and to go with like trees, every tree goes with a smaller land. Agati kajyanywe n'isuri kajyana iteka n'agataka. There is something that remain. Iyo urebye Reveriye n'abandi twicaye aha nagusaba gutekereza uti what remained that helped me to move on and to stand here. Kandi birahari byinshi. Reveriye yakomeje atubwire tani atubwira ko yashibutse atubwira ko yakoze ubukwe atubwira ko ari mu Busuwisi. Navuga ngo nawe wicaye aha survivor wanyuze muri jane gize ushobora gusanga nawe warashibutse ushobora gusanga hari icyo wahereyeho ushobora gusanga hari ibigushyigikiye. Ndavuga ni nicyo ndi buhereho. Ndibaza rero nti ibyo natekereje ariko bise ntekereza reflection to try to define what is resilience. I was thinking as Reverian was saying, resilience for survivors of genocide is an accepting of living, as Reverian said, live while you ask yourself, what this happened? Why me? Why my parents, brothers and sisters have been killed? Why? And you accepted to live, to study, to work, to marry, to have children without having a response of because. Abo twari kumwe ejo muri Survivors Union murabyibuka twararirimbye kuki wabyemeye dusoza tutabonye impamvu ariko dusoza tuvuga ko tugomba gukomeza kubaho nubwo tutabonye kubera ko. When hearing Reveriye n'abandi bafite stories, I was thinking resilience, it's not only the absence of pain. It's not only the absence of what we call traumatic symptoms, but resilience is accepting the pain, but also continue to live, to struggle. You know, in another Rwandan proverb that says, yuciye hakomeye hatagukomerekeje haragukomeza. What does not kill you make you strong. Twanyuza hakomeye, twarakomeretse. ariko reveriye n'abandi barakomeye. That's resilience. Resilience, I was just reflecting loudly, but I thought that resilience is that capacity of, let me say, seeing the light while you are in darkness. Isn't it? Reveriye n'abandi babonye urumuri mu gihe umwijima wari ubabundikiye. And what they did, bagerageje no guha urumuri abandi, barwereka abandi, baranarurema. Reveriyani mwumvise Etani n'umuryango barema n'urumuri mu gihe umwijima ubabundikiye. That's resilience we have. Resilience, natekereje ni rimwe na rimwe ni ukwemera kubana tutabona n'impamvu tubana. Accept to live together while it's very difficult to live together. And the survivors accepted to live together. While it's challenging, it's difficult. Twemeye kubana tubaho mu gihe byari bikomeye kubana. Iyo ni resilience. But because you talked about trauma and the problematic, I said who is not mentally affected, who, but because I had prepared some statistics, I will go through very quickly. According to National Rwandan Mental Health Survey for, I think, 2018, it is said that 35% of genocide survivors, they suffer from major depression. Meaning that the genocide against Tutsi that happened is still affecting the mental health of survivors. But it showed also that the young people between 14 and 18, 10% of that category of age, they suffer from mental health, one or more mental health issue. Meaning that the trauma can be transmitted generation by generation. That's what we call in Kinyarwanda kwishyano ryandura. Ishyano iyo utarebye neza rirandura. I don't know how I will translate that Rwandan proverb. Kugira ngo turebe aba bajene bacu kugira ngo we don't transmit trauma. I will not more focus on the issue. I will more focus on what can we do, as you asked the question. I would say we have already started. I was here yesterday facilitating the Survivors Union session. Very, very well categorized. Let me say what the people of my age, the people who were young during genocide, and the next generation, to try, let me say, to create and to co-create our own ways of healing, our own ways of dealing with the problem we are facing, and creating, let me say, the culturally and contextually appropriate ways. You remember, yesterday we give testimonies, we cried, we sing, we support each other. And in the Rwandan way, context, the collective healing is one of the approach. And I will really ask the supporters to support these kind of initiatives of this really co-created approach by survivors themselves, because they are expert. Sometimes you call me who started the mental health in school, but I think the survivors of genocide, the people who experienced the genocide, they are the ones who are expert. They know better what they suffer from, and probably they may tell us how to support them. And I think this approach of healing together, supporting together, you know the Rwandan proverb saying, "Ijoro libaro warirai," no one can tell a better story than the one who lived it. So they are the one who are expert. So I totally ask people, supporters, to continue to support this initiative, but also how the trauma is transmitted. The trauma, I think, is transmitted in a kind of 4 ways. The first one is transmitted through the parenting style. Ejo menya naravuze ko ihungabana rishobora kwandura mu kureresha ibikomere, mu kureresha ihungabana. When parents are traumatized, they can transmit trauma to their children when they use this parenting style that is affected. That's one way. The second way is when the children, our kids, they are confused. They want to know reality. They want to know our history. And the parents, we don't have words to tell to our kids what happened to their parents. And sometimes it's not easy. At the same time, the children, the young people, they don't have the good question to ask those sensitive, let me say, question around the stories, around what happened to their parents and their families. So I would say we need to tell to the next generation the truth. What happened to our families? What happened to their parents? And by telling the truth, the real history, we are at the same time healing, at the same time preventing the transmission of trauma. The last way, I will not really more focus is biological. Some sciences talk about the biological transmission. So, as I was saying, the healing together in a survivor union, in a group, in a collective spaces, how can we start thinking about healing together in our families? How do I tell my story to my kids? And how my kids ask what happened to me? So I think I was even discussing with KWIBUKA leaders yesterday how we start really supporting families. You know, even among like in couples, sometimes a husband does not know what happened to his wife, and a wife does not know what happened to her husband, and how the children will know what happened to them. So creating those spaces is one way of, let me say, preventing the transmission to our next generation. So to sum up, I would say trauma it's not a matter of time. It's not a matter of time. It's not saying that we are 32 years after genocide against Tutsi. It will be, let me say, Izoloha. But by time, it may be more complex and complicated. It may be possible to be transmitted to our young generation, but set up the collective way, the family ways, it's a solution, but really breeding on resilience, on the strength that our community, our families have. That's how I can respond to your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shaz. Thank you for also sharing in both Kinyarwanda and English and focusing on resilience. I think most of what you said in Kinyarwanda, you also translated in English. So I'm going to save a little time and ask the next question. And this question goes to you, Dr. Boyana. As we move forward, part of what causes survivors to experience deep trauma today is that genocide denial and distortion are spreading rapidly. So my question is, why is this current moment so dangerous, in terms of how these distortions and denials are spreading, and what are the consequences when false narratives about the genocide against the Tutsi go unchallenged? Thank you.
Thank you so much also for welcoming me here today. I think to actually follow up on what Dr. Shast just said, we can understand how difficult it is to archive history. It depends on stories of survivors. It also requires for them to be here today. If we compare to the Holocaust, there are almost no survivors today of the Holocaust. And it was a time when we didn't have all the technology to record that history. And therefore, archiving history today with all the tools and the material, the equipment, also the digital age that we live in is extremely important for historical clarity, so that we understand what happened, so that we can also pass it on to the next generations, whether families of survivors, but also the younger generations that surround them, because our children are also influenced by the environment that they live in. We are more of a global world that could be seen almost as flat, in a way that information circulates from one side to the other in a very easy way. And therefore, it's important to think about how education and how information need to be working hand in hand, and also thinking about how we can make sure that this doesn't happen, not just in Rwanda, but in the entire world. And we can see what are the dangers. Actually, we can see more and more that there's, I would say, less and less clarity, globally speaking. You all are here today, and I always say every KWIBUKA, every commemoration, I learn new things. I hear new testimonies, I meet new people. From the person that greets me at the airport, everybody has a story. Everybody has a book to write, and I really invite everybody to write their books, because this is the only thing that we can pass on after we're no longer there. And therefore, genocide denial takes several forms. There was the original form, which is the one that makes people simply deny genocide. Nothing happened in 1994 from April to July. We've heard it until very recently. Today, with the technology we have, with the access to information that we have, it's much more difficult to choose that direct path of denying genocide. Also because there is a clear recognition by the United Nations and by a number of countries, even by the General Assembly, being recognized by all the member states that there was a genocide, and one genocide in 1994, the genocide against the Tutsi. So genocide deniers, whether they're personally involved because they come from Rwanda and are denying genocide for a number of reasons. One reason could be to flee from justice because they're responsible, or children who are trying to protect their families who have participated in genocide. And this is actually the case of a large network of children of perpetrators who are also trying to protect the history or their parents, particularly in Europe, Belgium, France, etc. And then there is a genocide denial that is being done because often also some Rwandans have a hard time accepting that it was not done in their name. I'm speaking about this because this is something that happened in my own country. I was born in Bosnia, and we also experienced a war in 1992 and a genocide in Srebrenica in 1995. I come from the group that committed genocide, and in my own family, there are family members who deny genocide because they feel it's a personal thing, and I would be very happy to discuss this with Dr. Shast. Is when the group that perpetrated the genocide, members of that group deny genocide because they're saying it didn't happen in my name. I didn't participate. Of course, Rwandan history is more complex because the first who suffered from being targeted were the ones who said no to the genocide, who said no to the genocide ideology. And I've seen this also in Eastern Congo, where I traveled and collected testimonies of what we call the Banyarwanda Hutu and Tutsi who live in Eastern Congo in North Kivu after the separation of borders during the Berlin Conference. One part of Rwanda, of the former ancient Rwanda, was cut into Congo, and today is Congolese. So these people are Congolese. When the genocide perpetrators fled into Congo after the genocide, they tried to continue what they were doing in Rwanda, which is target the Congolese Tutsi this time, but also they reorganized and received support so that they can come back, or at least with their objective to come back to Rwanda and to finish the genocide. So to come back to the testimonies that I collected, some of the Hutu Banyarwanda, the former genocide perpetrators who created new groups, new armed groups, tried to recruit them to target the Tutsi of Congo, and also to be part of that project of returning to Rwanda. And we've collected testimonies of those Banyarwanda Hutu who said no to participating in this. And in my research, I have come to understand that this proves that there is such a thing as genocide ideology, is when people say no to it. They say, no, I will not target my neighbors, I will not target my childhood friends, sometimes family members, because this is a politics. One person said it's a politics of idiots. This is not what we should be standing for after we've lived together all this time. So genocide ideology is basically something that blurs the maps, or that blurs our understanding of how genocide denial operates. I'm going to come back to this question without taking too much time. But today, genocide denial is taking place through different forms, and it has become mainstream. Like I said, originally we denied genocide directly. There was no genocide. Today, it's not possible to do that. Actually, we prosecute genocide denial. There was a trial 2 years ago in France against Charles Nana, who is an author and who was convicted for denial of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. It's the first one that took place in France. Of course, there were several cases as well in Rwanda, because it's important to prevent repetition and recurrence. Charles Nana himself started by saying there was no genocide from April to July 1994. But that's not even what made him be convicted. It is these dubious forms of genocide denial that we hear today in many forms. One very, very well known is the theory of double genocide. If we understand that each group committed genocide against each other, in a way it's like saying there was no genocide. These were just inter-ethnic killings. There were inter-ethnic tensions, and each group committed murders against each other and killings. And this is not what happened, of course. But we are still using that method to deny genocide, so we would be saying that, yes, the Tutsi were targeted in 1994 between April and July. However, the Tutsi then targeted the Hutu, or it could also be at the same time. This is one of the main and I would say most effective theory of genocide denial. Because using words, these words that killed during the genocide with RTLM, with the hate media, are today killing with these dubious words, where we are trying to kind of make people believe that, yes, Rwanda is in Congo today, and Rwanda is committing genocide. So this is the dubious theory of double genocide that is being commonly used today. Without any facts, without any historical truth, we are using these words in a very light way, and yet it is not what is happening. So we have campaigns that are being promoted by civil society groups, that are being promoted by media, campaigns like Genocoast. Basically, it's also removing elements of that definition of genocide, because genocide is targeting a group to exterminate that group in part or in whole for who that group is, or for what that group is. It is not the consequences of a war, for example. So we cannot call genocide anything. It is the crime of crimes, and it's when we want to exterminate an entire group, we might not be able to do so, but that's the intention. Therefore, the intentions is what counts. And so today, just to finish on that, genocide denial is really spreading to social media because there's no oversight, there's no monitoring. We, as researchers and scholars, are bound by ethics of research, by methodologies that force us to cross-check information, to verify information, to show evidence. We can have a hypothesis, but until we show that evidence, it doesn't really exist. We would not get our degrees. However, today on social media, even the conventional media, we can say anything. Even the conventional media is not bound by these ethical expectations anymore, by their own editorial chiefs and so on, because people are thinking it's okay, it will be drowned in more information and we don't have to come back to it. And one last thing, while artificial intelligence is extremely good and important for us because we do so much more, I'm thinking even in terms of healthcare, mental care, et cetera, artificial intelligence helps us to really continue getting ahead. It also means that all the genocide denial and all the negative information and all the toxic information that is still targeting the same group, the Tutsi in the region, is going to be spreading much faster. And those who have access to these tools are even the most dangerous, whether it's media, and whether it's social media, everything that comes on social media that is being published there is going to take an exponential impact or have an exponential impact. So our children, the future generations who don't know anything about the history of Rwanda or the region, when they're going to do a search on the internet, they're going to have access to that wrong information. So I think those are the main challenges, and I think that it's our collective responsibility for our children not to come to normalize this kind of violence where they would be scrolling on their screens and seeing dead bodies and people getting cut with machetes, because it's still happening today in Congo, even people being burned alive and their flesh being consumed. So cannibalism is going on our screens, and we should not normalize these kind of things, but we should do everything we can to teach history, but also to fight against genocide denial and genocide ideology. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Arakoze cyane. Dr. Coulibaly akora ubushakashatsi ku bijyanye n'abahakana jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, akaba avuze mu magambo makeya ko cyane cyane muri iki gihe imbuga nkoranyambaga zirakoreshwa mu guhakana, cyane cyane hagakoreshwa ibitekerezo byo kuvuga ko ngo mu Rwanda habaye jenoside ebyiri. Abantu bakagenda bakabivuga, nta bushakashatsi buhari, turabizi ko bitabaye, ariko kubera ko bakoresha imbuga nkoranyambuga abantu bakabisoma bakabyemera. Icyo dusabye rero ni uko cyane cyane abarokotse jenoside twakwandika twashaka uburyo amateka yacu tuyavuga, tukayavuga nk'uko ari, kandi twajya tubona ibyo bintu byose ntiduceceke, ahubwo tukabicalenjinga, kandi tugakoresha uburyo abana bacu batazakurira mu isi babona ibyo bitekerezo byo guhakana jenoside. Tubikora rero tubabwiza ukuri, tukababwira amateka. Murakoze cyane. I'm gonna move on with the next question, and this goes to you, Mr. Kayihura, and it's about justice, which is really connected to what Dr. Coulibaly was saying. Many survivors are asking questions about justice as perpetrators are released. Fugitives still remain abroad, and genocide denial continues, as we just talked about. In today's reality, where do you believe justice stands for survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi?
Thank you, moderator. I wanted to apologize to the survivors. The way I understand the justice, we may not understand the justice the same way. As a survivor myself, and who contributed to the justice in my country, I know what the justice is about for my country, for Rwanda. So after the genocide, before the genocide, we had around 6 million, and half of that population, 15 years old and above, were around 3 million as well. Imagine if we say we lost over 1 million Tutsi, how many people were involved in the genocide? So the justice starts with that reality. Rwanda at that time, after genocide, chose accountability over impunity. 3 pillars of accountability were in place. We have International Criminal Court, which was in Arusha, Tanzania. We have also National Court, National Ordinary Court, and later we had Gacaca Court. Let's see what have been achieved for justice. Let me start by National Court. After the genocide, out of 700 magistrates, only 10% were available. So the government started building the justice system because it was completely destroyed the same way other government institutions were destroyed. They start by training magistrates and then put in place the law, organic law, that punishing the genocide because we had not that crime in Rwandan code. In December 1996 is when the first trial started. In 1998, only 1,300 cases were tried in national court. And we had 120,000 suspects in prison overcrowded. So Rwanda started looking other ways to try those people because they realized it will take around 100 years to try those people. They come up with Gacaca Court, and Gacaca Court started in 2012 and ended in 2000. No, it started in 2002 and ended in 2012. And Gacaca Court tried nearly 2 million individuals. And 72,000 were tried in absentia. When you see what Gacaca accomplished, I don't think any country in the world, any such accountability at that scale, the world had never seen that happen. At the international level, we had International Criminal Court, which started in 1995 and ended in 2015. It tried only, it indicted 93 cases and it tried 75 individuals. The critic, they said it was slow, but when you look at how the development of international law, they did important work. It was the first time in international law, international criminal, a genocide be prosecuted. In the case of the Prime Minister, Kambanda, he pleaded guilty. It has never been before. And in the case of Akayezu, which was the mayor of in Gitarama, the sexual violence, rape, was recognized as act of genocide. And they made also important, in the case of Karimera, the court said the genocide of the Tutsi can't be argued in the court anymore. Today, we have denials, but you can't go to the court to say genocide didn't happen. No, we have a precedent. So, also, we have to recognize the justice is not happening in the court only. Conviction is not only justice. When survivors, when a woman raped during the genocide, receive medical treatment, receive counseling, receive economic support, that is part of justice. When orphans, when widows receive free education, receive economic support, that's justice. When all survivors have the right to memory, to remember, and no one tells them to forget, that is justice. When survivors today ask the question where the justice stands now, I will say the justice is incomplete, but it is real. The difference of these two worlds is the gap between the legal process and the real life the survivor live. So in general, I will say the justice has been done, is still ongoing. We still have fugitives around the world. We have also some countries which are using universal jurisdiction who arrest fugitives. Some try them, others are extradited to Rwanda. In Rwanda, we have also a cell that track the fugitive. So yes, for survivor, they understand when they see people are released in the prison, yes, they are traumatized, but justice is not revenge. That's what I can say about justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mu magambo make, Mr. Kayihura atubwiye yuko nk'abarokotse jenoside yakorewe abatutsi yemeranywa natwe ko ubutabera butuzuye ariko ko hari intambwe nyinshi zagiye ziterwa. Asobanuye neza uko inkiko nyuma ya jenoside zari zifite cases nyinshi byashoboraga gutwara imyaka 100 bitewe nuko batari bafite abacamanza bahagije. Hanyuma igihugu cyacu kizana igitekerezo cya gacaca murazizi ko zagiye zigenda kandi ko zihutishije imanza abantu bakagenda babona ubutabera. Kandi avuga ko ubutabera ntabwo ari bwo mu rukiko gusa, hari no gufasha survivors, hari gufasha abanyeshuri kwiga, abana mu mashuri, hari kuvuza abarokotse, hari ibintu byinshi byagiye bikorwa. Ariko nubwo ibyo byose byakozwe, turabizi yabivuze ko hari abantu bakihishahisha mu bihugu bigiye bitandukanye. Hari bamwe bagenda bafatwa, ariko hari n'abandi bagihari batarafatwa. Ubutabera rero burakomeje. I think we are running out of time. Unfortunately, I wish we could continue. I'll just ask you to say one thing, like not a sentence, one thing that you want everyone who's here to remember from your session. Just one thing, not a sentence.
One thing, I will say 3. Denial is a tool of re-traumatizing. Denial is a tool of transmitting trauma because transmit confusion to our young generation. The second one, the good way to deal it is sharing our stories, our memories, and we can share in any way. In the way Reverie did, in a song, in drawings, in publication, in any way. Lastly, as the trauma can be transmitted, resilience can be transmitted. So let us focus to the transmission of resilience.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll try to do one word. Because we are what we call the international community, which has very negative connotations today, because we don't take the time to process information, I do want to call everyone to take the time and learn about the history of Rwanda and the history of the region, and not to make shortcuts to avoid situations like denial, and also for justice not to be able to be met, like all the fugitives that we see, but also for trauma to continue and for repetition of genocide. So to have never again materialize today, we as the international community, as people around the world, it is our collective responsibility to teach, to learn, to teach, and also to prevent and protect. Thank you.
Just one thing.
Thank you. I will say the justice stand with the resilience of the survivor, also with in leadership when the survivors lead the reconciliation process. That's what the justice stands with. So I would like to ask my colleague survivors, their responsibility is to know where those fugitives are. Where are they? If you know where they are, go to the authority. No one else is going to do for you. Yeah. So it's your responsibility to find them where they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you, everyone. Ibyo batubwiye n'ubundi ibyo bari batubwiye ni ugukomeza gusangiza kuvuga amateka yacu ndetse no gukomeza kwibuka ko nk'uko trauma ishobora kujya mu bana bacu cyangwa badukomokaho n'imbaraga dufite nazo zishobora kujya muri bo. So hanyuma asoje atubwira ngo aho tubona hakenewe ubutabera, niba hari abantu tubona bakeneye ko kuba tuzi aho bari bihishe, ni inshingano zacu kuba twagenda tukegera abayobozi tukaba twagira icyo dukora. Murakoze cyane rero, reka dukomeze na gahunda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our moderator and panelists for that meaningful discussion. We now invite remarks and a proclamation from Honorable Mayor Stephen Kepley of the city of Kentwood, Michigan. Tugiye kumva ijambo ry'umuyobozi w'umujyi wa Kentwood, Michigan.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to read the proclamation and make some brief comments afterwards. City of Kentwood, Michigan, Office of the Mayor, proclamation. Whereas the United States has welcomed many immigrants from around the world who fled their homeland due to horrific acts of violence and crime against humanity. And whereas between April 7th and July 19th of 1994, Rwanda, a country landlocked in the Great Lakes region of East Africa, experienced a campaign planned by extremist Hutu regime and conducted by Hutu militias for the mass murder of the Tutsi community, including anyone opposed to the genocide. And whereas as many as 1 million or more Tutsi men, women, and children were brutally killed in approximately 100 days. And whereas the violence included widespread violence conducted on Tutsi women, where hundreds of thousands of women were sexually assaulted by the Hutu extremists. And whereas this atrocity has been formally recognized by the United States, of which the United States is a founding member, as the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And whereas the United States and the city of Kentwood have become the home for the survivors of the genocide who now have the honor of being U.S. citizens. And now, therefore, I, Stephen C. Kepley, Mayor of the city of Kentwood, Michigan, do hereby recognize Tuesday, April 7th, 2026, as the International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. In the city of Kentwood, and I urge all citizens of Kentwood and West Michigan to learn from the past so that these types of atrocities may never take place in the world again. Signed, Stephen C. Kepley, Mayor for the city of Kentwood. It was my honor to write that proclamation. You may know this, you may not know this, but the world has come to the city of Kentwood. Less than half a mile from here is East Kentwood High School. It is the most diverse high school in Michigan and ranked in the top 5 in the United States. East Kentwood represents 105 countries and 117 languages. How did people get to come here? Well, it's good news and bad news. The bad news is that it's because of war, genocide. Places like Rwanda, Bosnia, Sudan, Myanmar, Burmese. That's the sad news. The good news is that they have become my friends, my brothers and sisters. One of them his name is Sanel. He is from Bosnia. His story is one of all his male members, his father, his grandfathers, his uncles were literally thrown off a cliff and killed. I asked Sanel, I said, Sanel, how do you do it? How do you continue on with your life after so much tragedy? And he simply said this, it's about forgiveness. I have forgiven them. That to me is a miracle. How in the world can you do that? But I am one who believes in miracles and a miracle worker. You see, I might be a mayor, but that's what I do. It's not who I am. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle. But more importantly, I'm a follower of Jesus. And it's because of my faith that I believe in this miracle worker. And if you think that you can never get to that place where, whether it be anger, hurt, trauma, depression, well, it will never leave you, I do believe in one who can remove those yokes. And so I know afterwards, Pastor Mick is going to be speaking, and after he's going to be speaking about hope. And if you're one who maybe would consider some prayer, I will make myself available to you to allow God time and space to break yokes, whether it would be trauma, depression, or maybe a path for forgiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kepley. Governor wa Michigan yavuze ko yasomye ku mugaragaro proclamation yemera jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, kandi yavuze ko Michigan buri mwaka ku itariki 7 z'ukwezi kwa 4 bazajya bifatanya n'Abanyarwanda kwibuka jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Yagarutse ko kuba abarokotse jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi bashobora kongera kubaho bagakomeza ubuzima nta zindi mbaraga uretse ko bemeye kubabarira. Now, we're about to hear and listen to the UN official address. Although he is unable to join us today in person, we're honored to receive a special video message from Dr. Chaloka Beyani, United Nations Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide. His message reflects on the continued global responsibility to protect human dignity, prevent atrocity crimes, and preserve memory through education and action. Please turn your attention to the screen as we receive remarks from Dr. Beyani. Nubwo atabashije kubana natwe uyu munsi, tugiye gukurikira ubutumwa bwa video bwa Dr. Chaloka Beyani, umujyanama mukuru w'umuryango w'abibumbye ushinzwe gukumira jenoside. Turabasaba kureba kuri screen, murakoze.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a profound honor to address you at the 32nd commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. I regret that I cannot be with you in person, and I thank KWIBUKA USA and the people of Kentwood for this invitation. I recently joined the people of Rwanda in Kigali to commemorate KWIBUKA 32, a deeply moving experience that reinforces our shared responsibility to remember and to act. Genocide is the gravest crime against humanity, the deliberate destruction of people based on identity. In April 1994, as an academic and member of the Oxfam's Board of Trustees, I received reports of mass killings of Tutsi. We examined the evidence and concluded that genocide was unfolding. When I visited Rwanda in July 1994, I witnessed its horrors firsthand, an experience that left an indelible mark on my conscience. That experience shaped my lifelong commitment to prevention. From 2003 to 2006, I worked with the International Conference on the Great Lakes region to develop frameworks to prevent such crimes, including the 2006 Pact on Security, Stability, and Development. This work underscored a fundamental truth. Understanding the past is essential to preventing future atrocities. Ladies and gentlemen, genocide does not happen spontaneously. It is planned, organized, and executed over time. Because it is a process, there are opportunities to prevent it. In Rwanda, those warning signs existed. Information reached key institutions, including the United Nations, and governments with the capacity to act. Yet the world failed. That failure led to reforms within the United Nations, including the establishment of my office to strengthen early warning and prevention. Today, as we look at conflicts around the world, from Sudan to the Middle East and ongoing instability in the Great Lakes region, we must acknowledge that we are still falling short. Xenophobia, racism, and intolerance are rising, while global cooperation is increasingly under strain. These trends remind us that vigilance and prevention are more urgent than ever. What does prevention mean in practice? It is not the responsibility of the United Nations alone. Prevention requires collective action from individuals, communities, civil society, religious leaders, governments, and the international community. Each of us has a role to play. The genocide against the Tutsi did not begin with machetes. It began with words, hate speech, dehumanized an entire group, and laid the foundation for violence. Today, we recognize hate speech as a key risk indicator for genocide. It has been amplified in the digital age, including through new technologies such as artificial intelligence. We must take this threat seriously. Even when not prohibited by law, hate speech must be challenged. We must promote responsible voices, counter misinformation, and reject rhetoric that incites violence, discrimination, and division. Equally important is confronting genocide denial. Where courts have established the truth, those decisions must be respected. Denial undermines justice, dishonors victims, and creates conditions for recurrence. Preventing genocide requires that we defend truth and memory. Prevention also demands accountability. Impunity fuels cycles of violence. We must strengthen mechanisms that hold perpetrators accountable, including regional courts in Africa. Justice is not only a response to past crimes, it is a deterrent against future ones. Ladies and gentlemen, the risk of such crimes has not disappeared. Around the world, people continue to face violence, displacement, and discrimination based on identity. But this is not inevitable. Rwanda has shown that recovery and reconciliation are possible with sustained commitment to justice, education, and social cohesion. This is a powerful reminder that resilience can be built even after unimaginable tragedy. As we commemorate the victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, let us renew our commitment to preventing such crimes wherever they may occur. Let us work to build societies grounded in dignity, equality, and respect for human rights. The most meaningful way to honor victims and survivors is to ensure that no one else suffers the same fate. This is our shared responsibility. This is our obligation. Thank you.
Arakoze Dr. Beyani yagarutse yongeye avuga ko ari kumwe n'Abanyarwanda muri ibi bihe twibuka Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Avuga ko Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi ari icyaha ndengakamere. Yongeye agaruka ko Jenoside itegurwa, ikigishwa ndetse ikashyirwa no mu bikorwa. Yatanze urugero rw'ubwicanyi butandukanye buri hirya no hino ku isi harimo no muri Sudan. Avuga ko ari inshingano zacu twese kurwanya ubwicanyi ndengakamere atari inshingano z'umuryango w'abibumbye gusa. Kwirinda Jenoside ni ukugaragaza ukuri kwayo haharanirwa ubutabera. Yagarutse ko u Rwanda rwagaragaje ko kwiyubaka uhereye ku busa bishoboka nyuma y'ibikomere rwanyuzemo. We will now hear remarks from the president of the Rwandan community in Michigan, Mr. Caleb Uwagaba. Mr. Caleb Uwagaba will also formally welcome Her Excellency Ambassador Mathilde Mukantabana, Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda to the United States of America. Please join me in respectfully welcoming Mr. Caleb. Tugeze mu mwanya wo gukurikira ijambo ry'umuyobozi w'Abanyarwanda batuye muri Michigan, Bwana Caleb Uwagaba.
Your Excellency Ambassador Mathilde Mukantabana, Honorable Mayor Stephen Caprin, representative of the Governor of Michigan, representative of the Senator Slotkin, Senior Pastor Mick, my brother Marcel, representative of KWIBUKA USA, these distinguished survivors, leaders, friends of Rwanda, and people of Michigan, mwiriwe neza. Today, here in Kentwood, Michigan, in the United States, we gather not only as Rwandans, but also as Americans, Michiganders, neighbors, and human beings, committed to truth, dignity, and protection of the life. KWIBUKA is not just to remember, it's not simply a commemoration, it is a moral responsibility, it is a promise we renew each year, never again, anywhere to anyone. As the president of Michigan Rwandan Community Association, and on behalf of the Rwandan community in the United States, it is my profound honor to have all of you here at the U.S. National Commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. First of all, Your Excellency Ambassador, allow me to take this moment to appreciate the team behind this commemoration event success, including not limited to KWIBUKA USA members who worked tirelessly with us to host this event, and the USRCA, leadership at the state level, community leaders from different states, and the members of different communities, including but not limited also to MPA, community members, Jewish Federation of Grand Rapids, and our community members who contributed a lot. This year, Michigan has shown extraordinary leadership. We are deeply honored that the Governor Gretchen Whitmer issued a statewide proclamation recognizing KWIBUKA 32 and affirming Michigan's commitment to remembrance, education, and fight against the genocide denial. We are also equally grateful to the Mayor Stefan Kaplan of Kentwood and the Mayor David LaGrand of Grand Rapids, whom each of them issued a proclamation honoring the victims of understanding with our communities. This sends a message to our communities in the United States. As you can see here next to me, we have all the proclamations. And for your information, all these proclamations were issued this year in April and May. It is now my privilege to welcome a woman whose leadership embodies dignity, clarity, and steady commitment to truth. Her Excellency Ambassador Matilda Mukantabana, the Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda to the United States. Madam Ambassador, your presence here honors our communities at large. Your presence, you represent a nation that rises from ashes to become a global example of reconciliation, unity, and resilience. You represent survivors whose courage rebuilt our country, and you represent the truth that the world must know and must hear. Michigan welcomes you with respect, gratitude, and solidarity. As we continue this commemoration, let us remember KWIBUKA is not about the past, it is about the choice we make today. And the question we ask ourselves, do we stand up to see justice? Do we challenge hatred when it appears in our communities? On behalf of the Michigan Rwandan Community Association and the U.S. Rwandan community abroad, I thank each and everyone who stands with us today. May we remember, may we reunite, may we renew. It is my honor now to welcome and invite Her Excellency Ambassador Matilda to deliver the Rwandan government address. Thank you. Murakoze cyane.
Good afternoon, fellow Rwandans, dear friends and family. As we continue the 32nd commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, I would like to extend to you strength, comfort during this solemn period of remembrance. Today, we stand together to honor the more than 1 million lives lost and to reaffirm our shared commitment to memory, dignity, and resilience. Distinguished guests, first of all, let me start by extending my deepest gratitude to the Mayor of Kentwood, Mr. Stephen Kipley, for issuing this proclamation, but also for opening your door to the commemoration, as well as the Church of Kentwood. We were also lucky this morning also to have another proclamation from the Mayor of Grand Rapids, Michigan. These proclamations are powerful and meaningful. They are acts of recognition. They affirm that the memory of our loved ones resonates beyond the Rwanda borders, and that the values of truth and humanity have found home here in Michigan. Your continued presence and unwavering support remind us that we do not grieve alone. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Dr. Shast Wihoreye, Dr. Aboana Kuribari, Edward Kaihura, and Dr. Favorite Radukunda, because of your rich and informative discussion KWIBUKA memory, justice, and legacy that we carry forward. You have really approached the whole theme of commemoration. That is, remember, unite, renew. Your insights have enriched this commemoration and deepened our collective understanding of what it means to remember with a purpose, to seek justice with courage, and to pass on a legacy. But my primary reason for being here is the recognition of survivors. This retreat is an essential step in the journey toward healing. Gathering in a community, sharing stories, and supporting one another is not simply a tradition, it's a lifeline. These moments foster resilience, restore dignity, and remind survivors that they are seen and their pain is acknowledged and that they are not alone carrying the cross. To every survivor here, especially you, Reverien, it's very difficult to speak after you have spoken. Thank you for giving your story, because that's I have to read what the president of Rwanda said. At one point he said, reconciliation itself comes with a cost. Because you mentioned reconciliation. We had to ask the survivors of genocide for the impossible in order to restore our nation, to live together again with those who had watched murder their loved ones as their own children flourished. But we couldn't ask anything else to the perpetrators. Only survivors had something left to give. And what is left to give is their forgiveness. They are the only ones who can give that forgiveness, nobody else. They have something left to give. But at the same time, it's understandable, it's the most grueling to ask for anybody to forgive. You know, forgiveness comes at one pace, but one thing I have to tell you is that as a nation, our nation died. The whole nation died. But there was one tiny light left. And this is what is driving our country right now. You see, because they had to go beyond what I call the human equations and be able to say, we take grain and chaff together and we mold the nation. The good, the ugly, and be able to build something very beautiful. So, one thing I can say is, many of you have lost family. We have lost families. But many people are still carrying the trauma, they are carrying the wounds and the scars. We deeply commend your strength and your efforts to keep the life of hope alive. Although many of you have lost family, one thing I can tell you is that Rwanda, all of us are your family. We are bound not only by shared history, but by love, by memory, and by also an unbreakable commitment to one another. KWIBUKA 32, under the theme Remember, Unite, Renew, is both a reflection and a call to action. We remember because truth matters. The genocide against the Tutsi was not spontaneous. They talked about it. All the speakers who came before talked about the planning. It was not, as some would make you believe, eruption of savage violence. Our humanity was tested to the limits. But here we are, here we remember, all of them, our parents, our sisters, our brothers, our neighbors. Our collective memory has allowed us to look within and reimagine what it means to live together. It has transformed remembrance into an enduring commitment to peace, unity, and development. We have transformed our wounded memory into fertile ground from which we draw lessons and strength. We remember because today, as you expressed very well, Gohana, the threat is no longer only silence. It's also a harmful perversion of the truth. It's a denial. It's a revisionism. The genocide was deliberately planned and executed. Across the world, there are organized efforts to rewrite the history of genocide, to minimize genocide, to deny its planning, or to promote false equivalencies between war and genocide. And I'm not going to talk about other things that it has evolved because of social media and other things happening today. So I call on all of you who are present here in this room to help us confront genocide ideology and to oppose with clarity, facts, and resolve. We remember so that the truth can triumph. We unite because unity is the foundation of resilience. After the genocide, Rwanda faced a choice. We could have remained trapped in a division or rebuild as one people. We faced immense challenges as a nation, but Rwanda chose unity of all the Rwandans. And it was not an easy choice. Forgiveness is not easy. Unity is not easy. And there was no manual, there was no template we had to follow. We had to find within ourselves, within our traditions, how we could move forward. And justice, even though it was not, like many types of justice, it was not perfect, but it allowed us to move forward because there was a sense of accountability. We chose to rebuild the nation around a shared identity. Ndi Umunyarwanda. I'm a Rwandan. And this was accompanied by deliberate policies and national commitment. We rejected ethnic divisions, and then we embark on this journey that future generations will continue to take, the journey of unity and reconciliation. But I have to tell you that today's choice, and that choice is reflected in immeasurable progress. In Rwanda, we have what we call a barometer to measure how far we have come. And the 2025 National Unity Barometer, among all the things that you could have measured throughout the whole country, an overwhelming percentage of Rwandans were affirming their pride in their national identity and recognized the importance of unity-building programs. This shows that even after unimaginable tragedy, a nation can rebuild trust, dignity, and cohesion. But unity requires constant vigilance. And the effects of genocide ideology and the wounds carried by survivors remind us that this work is in progress. We continue. We renew because remembrance might lead to action. KWIBUKA, remember, is not just about looking back. It's also about shaping the future. Today, the ideology that fueled the genocide has not disappeared. It's in our region. It has adapted. And perpetrators not only systematically sought to exterminate the Tutsi people, but they also continue the torch-bearers of genocidal ideology in denial in our region. Denial is present and well in many institutions, even in institutions of higher learning, and countries that knowingly try to scramble history by establishing a false moral equivalency between a war and a genocide. So I call on you to remain vigilant because prevention is not a slogan. It's a duty and a shared responsibility. Speak up, because silence can be perceived as a quiescence. The never again must be upheld through sustained collective effort. To the members of the Rwandan community here in Michigan, each of you has a role to play to engage, to remember, and to uphold the values that define this period. Your presence and participation matters. KWIBUKA is not just a Rwanda story. It's a global story. It's a humanity story. So we call on you, and I'm so happy that we've already partnered by doing what we have done for nurturing our generation here in Michigan. Our partnership can help us to continue fighting against genocide and genocide ideology, because genocide prevention requires unwavering commitment from all of us. As I conclude, I would like to once again express my gratitude to all of you for standing with us today as we remember and honor our loved ones. And again, I extend our sincere thanks to this church, Kentwood Community Church, for graciously opening its doors and providing sacred space for us to reflect, remember, and engage in this important dialogue. Thank you, KWIBUKA, US, Marcel, and your team that is here, and Caleb and the team from the community of Michigan for bringing us together and for your tireless dedication to the mission of remembrance, healing, and resilience. And for the friends of Rwanda, we really appreciate your friendship and solidarity. Turi kumwe, twibuke twiyubaka. Urakoze.
Murakoze cyane. Umuyobozi w'Abanyarwanda batuye muri Michigan arakoze ku ijambo ryiza yatugejejeho. Yagarutse ku butwari bw'abarokotse Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, avuga ko kwemera gusangiza ubuhamya no gusigasira amateka atari ukomora ibikomere gusa, ahubwo ari ugusigasira amateka ndetse no kongera kugarura ubumuntu mu bantu, duharanira ko isi imenya icyo urwango ndengakamere rushobora gukora ndetse no kongera kwiyubaka uhereye ku busa ko bishoboka. Yavuze ko kwibuka abazize Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi bitari iby'Abanyarwanda gusa, ahubwo n'iby'umuntu wese ufite umutimanama. By'umwihariko yashimiye Governor wa Michigan, Mayor wa Kentwood, Mayor wa Grand Rapids bemeye ku mugaragaro Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Yavuze ko kuba Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi yemewe ku mugaragaro muri Michigan bivuze ko urubyiruko ruzigishwa amateka ya Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, bakigishwa ububi bw'urwango, ivangura iryo ari ryo ryose ndetse n'ububi bwo gutesha agaciro ikiremwamuntu. Yavuze ko kandi bizafasha mu butabera rusange. Ambassador Mathilde yagarutse ku gushimira by'umwihariko Mayor wa Kentwood kuba yemeye ku mugaragaro Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Yashimiye Kentwood Community Church yatwakiriye uyu munsi kwifatanya n'Abanyarwanda mu kwibuka abazize Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Ashimira abantu bose badufashije mu biganiro uyu munsi. Yabwiye abarokotse Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi by'umwihariko Reverien Rurangwa watanze ubuhamya ndetse n'abandi bose barokotse Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Yongeye kandi avuga ko benshi muri twe twabuze abacu ariko tukigendana ibikomere. Avuga ko kwibuka ari igihe cyo gusubira mu mateka yacu kandi ko ayo mateka adufasha kugira ubumwe, ubutwari ndetse no kubaho mu mahoro. Yavuze ko Jenoside yateguwe kandi yashizwe mu bikorwa, ariko benshi ku isi ntibabura kuyihakana no kuyipfobya. U Rwanda rwahisemo ubumwe. Ku kubabarira ntabwo byoroshye, kwiyunga ntabwo byoroshye, ariko turabishoboye. Ubu umunyarwanda yibona nk'umunyarwanda, ndi umunyarwanda. Abakoze jenoside yakorewe abatutsi ntibahagarikiye kubica gusa, ahubwo bakomeje n'umugambi wo kuyihakana. Guharanira ko jenoside itazongera kubaho ni inshingano zacu twese, kandi kwibuka ntabwo ari amateka y'u Rwanda gusa, ahubwo ni amateka y'umugabane w'isi yose. Barakoze cyane. As we come close to this United States national commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, we do so with remembrance in our hearts and responsibility before us. We remember the lives that were lost, we honor the resilience of survivors, and we commit ourselves to truth, humanity, justice, and the prevention of genocide in its all forms. To offer our closing prayer and final reflection, I now invite the senior pastor of Kentwood Community Church, Pastor Vich. Thank you.
I look out tonight and I see an amazing people, a brave people, courageous people. And it's an honor to be able to be with you tonight, to hear your story and to not ever let it die. I was asked by our staff about hosting this, and there's something I've never said before publicly, but to close friends. I was 28 years old when the genocide occurred. I was born in the Midwest of the United States of America, many, many miles away from that tragedy. But yet I am a follower of Jesus, and I am an ordained minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, thinking about how can such a young lad make an impact on the world, and to hear such a tragedy that's happening on the continent of Africa. And your sorrow and your pain is real. We can never erase it. And as I heard that story, I remember it touched me deep to the core of who I was at 28 years old, many years ago. Nothing will ever take that away from you, what you experienced. But something happened to this young white American kid in the state of Indiana, in a small town called Marion, which no one has ever heard. And in that moment, I made this commitment to God, and I said, I will. I cannot change that which happened to that country. I can't change politics and people in power, but I can go and make a difference. And it was one of the incredible moments in my life that moved me to move to a country called Azerbaijan, which was in the middle of a war with a country called Armenia. And I went to Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan are Muslims, and Armenia is Christians. And people said, how can you as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ go and help those that are Muslims when you should be helping those that are Christians in Armenia? It was not that I was trying to ignore my brothers and sisters in Christ. It was more that I believe that everybody's created in the image of God. And although we may have differences about what that means and what that looks like, I was going to be the hands and feet to a people that desperately needed it at that moment. And for 10 years, I served and adopted and struggled alongside and learned. And it was in that experience that I don't know how much in 10 years that we were able to do, but we provided schools and computer literacy and English and food and all of those things that are necessary when you're in the middle of a war like that. I know it wasn't genocide, but death is death regardless of what you call it. And it's evil and it's satanic. There is one. God is not the one that caused this. There's one who always desires to destroy. And when I was asked to host this, as the mayor said, we sit in the midst of a beautiful melting pot of pluralism, 105 languages. And this church that I serve, we have over 50 nations represented. We sing in 13 different languages. One of our own pastors is a refugee sitting in the front row right here. So we are a church of and for the nations, and we make that clear, that the gospel's for everyone, regardless if we don't understand. But I feel like as we sit with one another, we learn a little bit more. I learned a lot. I would never claim to understand what you've gone through. I would never stand up here and try to lecture you on what could and should be. You were doing a great job. You are an amazing people. But before I pray, I was just asked to give a message of hope as a follower of Jesus Christ. When these kinds of events happen, people ask the question, where is God? Can my heart ever be healed? Is there hope after such devastation? Important questions. You know, the Bible never shuns, never walks away from such pretense. These tragedies do exist, and God meets us in those sorrows. Here's what I know in my many years of ministry. I have buried babies. I've sat alongside moms and dads. Tragedy beyond description. And in those moments, we always have a choice to make. God gave us free will. And it's a T in the road. And I've watched people go both ways. In that moment, in that pain, in that hurt, they will say, damn God, and walk away. He does not exist. Or they will turn into the arms of God and say, have mercy, I need help. There's choices that we have that God grants. But I believe the Bible's not silent about this. I believe that whatever tragedy it is, that's why there's a cross. That's why Jesus came, because of our choices that we make. Jesus comes near the brokenhearted, my friends. Psalm 134 says, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted, and he saves the crushed in spirit. One of the greatest challenges of our suffering and our pain is the lie that says to you, you are alone and you are abandoned. But the Bible tells us the opposite. God moves towards our brokenness. When tragedy strikes and people ask, where is God? My response to that is simply this. The answer is the gospel. That God said, I will come and I will see. And he sees every tear. And he hears every cry. And he, mark my word, knows every name. I believe that with every tragedy I've seen. The scriptures declares that Jesus was called a man of sorrow, acquainted with sorrows in Isaiah 53. Jesus understood betrayal, violence, injustice, and even death. Do you remember the tomb of Lazarus? Everyone was weeping and crying, and Jesus knew he was going to raise him from the dead, but he wept with them. He entered into our pain. What I want us to know today is that Jesus not only enters into our brokenness, but he heals it. Psalm 147 says he heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wound. This genocide has left wounds, emotional and spiritual. We are spiritual beings, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Family wounds, national wounds, and generational wounds, as many of you articulated. Some are visible and some are hidden deep in our souls. You've done an incredible job with human efforts, with our policies, our justice, our reconciliation, meetings like this and gatherings like this, all essential. But I believe only Jesus heals the most deepest part of who we are in our heart, the heart issue. The gospel is the transformation. That's why the leadership asked me to conclude tonight. It means refusing to let evil have the final word. The resurrection of Jesus says death will not win. Hatred will not win. Darkness will not win, and evil will not win. From the ashes, we know that hope can arise. And many of you sit here as a testimony to that. If we were in church right now, we'd say amen. Is that not true? Jesus also brings comfort to those who mourn. Do you remember the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5? Blessed are those who mourn, for they will what? They will be comforted. This promise feels upside down in our world, doesn't it? But how can mourning be blessed? Because Jesus promises that sorrow is not the end of the story. Pain is not the end of the story. Biblical hope is not pretending that evil doesn't exist or pain does not exist. Biblical hope is the confidence that God will redeem that which seems unredeemable. One day, the Bible tells us, and this is our hope, you will never get full justice, but one day there will be justice. We should strive for justice in this day and in this hour. But one day, everyone will stand before God, whether we believe it or not. Every tear will be wiped away. Every injustice will be answered, and every wrong will be made right. Revelation 21 says, He will wipe away every tear from your eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or even crying or pain. The hope is possible because Jesus rose from the dead, and the resurrection changes everything. Suffering is temporary, death is defeated, and eternal life is offered to every single one of us. For those of us who believe the grave is not the end, there is this resurrection hope. And then finally, the hope for your country can move forward. The story that you carry must continue on. Loud, I learned so much, and clear. It's a testimony of survival, of rebuilding, reconciliation, grace, and God being a helper in the midst of so much evil. Only God can bring us together through such darkness and still produce healing and forgiveness and restoration. The power of the gospel is simply this: Jesus not only saves our souls, He restores our lives, our families, our communities, and yes, even our nations. The world often responds to hatred with more hatred, but Jesus teaches us another way, doesn't He? That answer is forgiveness over revenge, reconciliation over division, and love over hatred, and hope over despair. That hope is desperately needed in our world today. Rwanda is the example of that. You are a shining star. When my kids would go to the school in the early days when they were young, my wife would quote Philippians 2 to them, and it says, "You will shine like the stars in the universe." And she would send them off to school, and she would say, "It's really, really dark out there, but you will shine bright." You are shining as an example in a crazy world in which we live in today. So today we remember, today we lament, and we mourn. Today we honor those who have suffered and those who have lost, but not without hope. Not a shallow hope, not a hope that is somehow put in men or government or intellectuals, but hope that is from Jesus Christ. Jesus clearly said to each and every one of us, whether we believe it or not, He said, "I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And so today, I ask you, where are you at? Because if there's one thing that suffering and pain does, is it makes us stop lying to ourselves. It causes us to tell the truth of where we really are. I'm not talking about tradition or going to church or being born in a Christian home. I'm talking about understanding what it is to have a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And so, to you, before I pray, I want you to know that He is near, and He heals wounded hearts, and He comforts, and He has conquered the grave. The cross tells us that God loves us today. And you may think that's some off mystical thing, but I get a chance to have a front row seat, and I see it transform people's lives every single day from cultures all over the world. For that, I hold on to. And because Jesus lives, there's hope beyond the ashes. I would like to pray for you humbly if you would allow for that. And out of respect, I'm asking you, if you would you bow your heads with me? And so right now, I pray in the name of Jesus for each of my brothers and my sisters here in this place, that as we go from here, that you would begin and continue to do the work that you've called them to do. If there's someone who needs healing, I pray that you would help them with their healing. If there's someone that's doubting their faith, that you would speak powerfully to them. If there's someone that is lonely, you would grant them brothers and sisters to come around and see them and value them, and that you would give them the hope that they need. May this nation rise from the ashes to the potential of what can be, and we trust you for your help in this process. And I pray this in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. I think I'm to close this time, and if that is true, is that true? Yeah? I'm not overstepping my bounds? The Lord bless you, and the Lord keep you, and the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you, and the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen.
Thank you so much, Pastor Vich. On behalf of organizers, I would like to sincerely thank all our distinguished guests, speakers, survivors, faith leaders, community members, volunteers, and all those who joined us today in remembrance and solidarity. Special thanks to Kentwood Community Church for hosting us. May we continue to carry forward the responsibility of memory with courage, dignity, and humanity. Mr. Reverien Rurangwa, who gave us a testimony, brought books which are in the lobby, and he's also available to sign them. Please support his organization. We also have other survivors' books, and some of those books' authors are also in the lobby. Parents who left their children at the daycare, the protocol team will guide you to the daycare room. Mu izina ry'abateguye iki gikorwa turashimira byimazeyo abashyitsi bose, abatanze ibiganiro, abarokotse, abayobozi b'amadini, abakoranabushake ndetse n'ababifatanyije natwe bose muri iki gikorwa cyo kwibuka ku nshuro ya 32 Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi mu 1994 hano muri Leta Zunze Ubumwe za Amerika. Kwibuka ntibirangirira aha, ariko dukomeze kuzirikana abazize Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, tubaha icyubahiro bambuwe kandi dukomeza gusigasira amateka yabo. Ndakangurira buri wese gukomeza kurwana ingengabitekerezo ya Jenoside aho iva ikagera no kuba aho ijwi ry'ukuri. By'umwihariko ndakangurira urubyiruko kumenya amateka yacu no kuyasigasira kuko ari twe tuzakomeza gutwara uwo murage w'ukuri n'ubumwe mu gihe kizaza. Reverien waduhaye ubuhamya yatuzaniye ibitabo, araza kuba ari muri lobby aho twinjiriye, ndetse dufite n'ibindi bitabo by'abarokotse Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Mukomere mwese, twibuke twiyubaka. Murakoze.
Tâchons de faire que nos enfants aient raison d'espérer.